my name is Cassie. I'm an Academy presenter, and today we're going to do some science together. And I use she, her pronouns, I should say. So we're going to be doing a science demonstration, and I'm going to share my screen because it's going to help us with some instructions along the way. So give me just a moment here while I share my screen with you. And I have some friends with me that are helping me behind the scenes. So Janine is there, and she's going to be making sure that my screen looks okay and that she's relaying anything in the chat to me that you might be saying. So
good morning, Cassie.
Good morning, Janine. I'm glad you're here. All right, so yes, again, welcome. Hi, members. Thank you so much for being supporters of the Academy. And here's how you are going to interact with me during this program today. So during our program, during our science demonstration, sometimes I'm going to launch a poll, and it's kind of like a little pop-up screen that's going to give you options to choose from. Another thing we're going to be doing is chatting with each other in the chat box. So Janine, do you want to describe to us how to find the chat box?
Sure. If you go to the middle of the bottom of your screen, typically, you'll see a little like a cartoon bubble where usually there's some kind of writing. Click on that. It'll show you the chat room, and you go to the bottom of the chat screen. It says type a message here, and I will type one right now to all of you.
Thanks, Janine. Yeah, if you can find the chat box, go ahead and say good morning or hi in the chat so I know you're there. Oh, great. Hi, Annalise. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Amelia and Mindy and Georgia. All right, thank you. Keep telling me if you're there by saying hi. And in the meantime, let's try out what a poll looks like. So the first poll we're going to do together is we're going to take a vote. Which of the following Academy animals is your favorite? And maybe you have a real different favorite at the Academy, but that's okay. We're just going to choose from these four. Would you choose the butterflies in the rainforest, the African penguins in African Hall, the cow nose rays in the Philippine Lagoon, or Claude, the albino American alligator? So here comes your poll right now. Go ahead and pick which one is your favorite. And we'll give you a couple seconds to do so. I know which one I would pick, but I'm not going to say.
It's kind of hard to choose because they're so great. Each one of them has got such a different look and actions that they do.
I know, and I can't wait till we can get back inside the museum to see them in person again.
Me
but I
too.
hear they're all doing great. All right. Oh, wow. It looks like there is a tie. So it looks like it looks like 44% of you said that penguins are your favorite, and 44% of you also said that the alligator was your favorite. But we also had a good number of votes for the butterflies and the rays. All right, so thanks for participating along with us. Okay, so now let's get back to our science today. So we're going to be doing science together. And when we do that, we do a couple science actions. There's a couple things that we do. And you know what? We do these things all the time in our daily lives. You're a scientist every day. We do that when we look closely and we're curious about things and we notice things about them. We do it when we think deeply, we ask questions, and when we listen to each other and talk to each other about what we learn. So notice if you do any of those things during our demonstration today, and then notice when you do that in your own life around the house every day. All right, so here are some of the things we're going to be using for our science demonstration today. We're going to be making an antacid lava lamp. It's a little different than a traditional lava lamp, but you'll see what I mean. So a couple of things you're gonna need is some sort of tall, clear container. A tall glass or cup would be fine. A plastic water bottle would be fine. You also need two small clear containers. I've got this, show you, not very big compared to the size of my hand. A shot glass would work. You need some cooking oil, any kind of cooking oil, vegetable, canola, peanut, whatever you've got. We're not going to be using too much. We're gonna need some water straight out of the faucet, out of the tap. You'll need some antacid tablets. One of the most popular brands is Alka-Seltzer. So I'll be using Alka-Seltzer today. And if you have some food coloring, it'll make it a little extra fun, but you don't need it. It's completely optional. All right, so to begin, we're going to find out what happens when we add Alka-Seltzer to these different liquids. Now, if you've got the ingredients and you're doing the experiment with me today, awesome. And if you don't, that's okay. You can still participate by using the chat box, and you can do it at home later. A lot of these ingredients you probably have around the house. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out what happens when we put the antacid tablet in water. Now I'm curious, is anyone doing this experiment with me today? If you are, go ahead and write in the chat box, I am, and that way I know you're doing it with me. All right, now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our antacid tablets and we're going to add it to the water. Okay, a couple of you are, thank you for telling me. So I'm going to try and set up my little table here so that you can see what I'm doing. And I'll move my screen down a little bit lower. There we go. Hey Janine, will you let me know, can you see my little table here with the cup on it?
I can see the cup. I can't see the table.
Okay, as long as you can see the cup, that's all that matters. The table's not really that exciting.
Okay.
All right, so I've got my cup, and this is the one that has water in it. Just straight tap water from the faucet. Now, what do you think is going to happen when I add the antacid to the water? Okay, go ahead and write it in the chat, or if you don't want to put it in the chat, that's okay. If there's somebody next to you, oh Mindy, that's actually the wrong poll. Can we take that away because we're not doing the oil yet? Okay, you got a sneak peek of what we're gonna do next. Right now, we're just figuring out what's gonna happen when we put the antacid in the water. And you're going to put that in the chat box, what you think will happen. All right, do you think that there will be bubbles? Do you think nothing's gonna happen? Do you think something else is gonna happen? Let's see, one person says
water explosion.
Water explosion, maybe, we'll find out. Now it's kind of a tiny cup, so instead of using a whole tablet, I'm just using a little piece of one. I'm using maybe a quarter, so 1/4 of the tablet. All right, here we go. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Ooh, I hear fizzing, and I see bubbles. For those of you doing it at home, let me know what you see. What are you observing? All right, and if you're not doing this from home, let's take a look. I took a video of this ahead of time of what it looks like overhead. So let's make some observations together. So here's the same cup with the Alka-Seltzer tablet. And it started to bubble and fizz. And I'm looking in my cup right now, and I noticed that the Alka-Seltzer is gone, and there's only bubbles left. And in our video, you can see that the water's starting to clear, and there's maybe just some small pieces of Alka-Seltzer left. Yeah, so what we saw happen was a reaction. Something happened. When we put the Alka-Seltzer in the water, it bubbled and fizzed and dissolved. All right, so now we know what happens when we put it in water. So let's try our next piece. Uh-oh, I lost my, there it is. Let's try it in oil. So now, Mindy, we can do our poll. All right, friends viewing from home, what do you think will happen when we add the Alka-Seltzer to our oil? I'm using vegetable oil, but again, it doesn't matter. So in our poll, go ahead and tell me, do you think it'll make bubbles? Do you think nothing's gonna happen? Or do you think something else is going to happen? So go ahead and vote. I'll give you a minute to do so. Janine, are you able to see the oil okay? Right here?
It's at the very bottom of the screen. It's a little difficult. There we go. That's a little better. Yes, that's much better right there.
Great.
And somebody asked a great question.
Yeah.
They asked, I wonder what would happen if we used sparkling water.
Wow, that's such a great question. You know what? I've never tried it. And that's something that we could probably do from home. If you have some sparkling water from home, give it a shot. see what happens. I'm really curious. Maybe I'll try that too. All right, so looks like we have our poll results. Janine, do you want to tell us what we've got?
We have an amazing poll here, and something else. A lot of us aren't quite sure, but we think something else is going to happen besides bubbles or nothing. 6 of 11 of you said something else. 3 people said bubbles, and 2 people said nothing.
Okay, well, let's give it a shot. If you're doing it from home, go ahead, add your Alka-Seltzer now, and I'll add it to my oil right here. And then we're going to take a look. So while I'm observing from here, I'm going to play a video for all of you at home who aren't doing the experiment so you can see what's going on. All right. Well, I don't hear any fizzing. And I see maybe a couple bubbles, but nothing like what I saw earlier. So maybe a little bit of something is happening, but not a strong reaction like what we were seeing from before when we added the Alka-Seltzer to the water. So we're not getting a strong reaction. All right. Now that's really interesting because what happened when we added it to the water is something called an acid-base reaction. You see, Alka-Seltzer is made out of a couple of different ingredients. It's made out of aspirin, it's made out of baking soda, and it's made out of citric acid. And when you add an acid and a base together, you get a reaction. So for example, if you've ever added baking soda and vinegar, you might have saw something happen. Has anyone ever tried that from home before? Have you ever tried mixing baking soda and vinegar? Go ahead and say, I have, or tell me what you saw happen. Somebody said yes. Annalise has. All right, yeah, absolutely. You do see a big reaction. And if you've never done before, try it from home. All right, so now that we figured out what happens when we add Alka-Seltzer to the oil, it's kind of like not much of a reaction at all. And when we add it to the water, which has a big reaction, and it bubbles and fizzes and dissolves, what would happen if we added it to both? All right, so here's where the next step comes in. I'm going to stop screen sharing so that you can see me a little bit bigger. All right, I'm going to put our 2 little containers aside of water and oil now that we know what happened. And keep that information stored for later because we're going to use it. We're going to use that data we learned from our first experiment to see what happens in here. Now, I went ahead and set this up ahead of time, but if you haven't already, let's do that now. In order to set up our lava lamp, what you're going to need is your tall container. And it doesn't really matter what you're using. I just happen to have this plastic water bottle. And into your tall container, you're going to put water. And you can put about 1/3 water. I think I have a little bit too much water. You're going to put about 1/3 water and 2/3 oil. Now, this is a lot of oil and a lot of water, but you can do it in a smaller container, and that's fine. You'll still see what happens later. So you're going to mix those 2 together. Now, in here, I also added food coloring. And I added blue food coloring, which is why this layer down here is blue. Now, if you notice, there's 2 different layers in this container. And this top one, this yellow layer, it looks yellow to me at least, is the oil. And this one down here, the blue layer, is the water. Now, if the oil is on top and the water is on the bottom, that tells us something about its density, about which one's heavier. So tell me in the chat box or turn to your neighbor and talk together. Which of these 2 liquids is more dense? Is it the oil or is it the water? I'll give you a minute to chat, to put it in the chat.
Elizabeth and Annalise have both tried the experiment you just mentioned, and they did it with 3 different things: rockets, balloons, and a cork and wine bottle.
Oh, with the vinegar and baking soda?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really fun. I've done it before where you put the baking soda in the balloon and the vinegar in another container, and then you mix it and the balloon blows up. Yeah. It's okay, let's see. Which liquid is denser? Is it the water or the oil? Well, if something is more dense, it's heavier and it'll sink to the bottom. And when I'm looking and observing at this container, the one at the bottom is the blue water. And you know what? Even if I mix it up, even if I shook it, guess what happens? Oil and water don't mix. They'll always separate, and the water, because it's more dense, will always fall to the bottom, and the oil will always go up to the top. All right, so now that we've kind of established which one is more dense, the water is more dense, and which one's less dense, the oil is less dense, what's gonna happen when we add the Alka-Seltzer? So we already had some information. We already tried this out in the oil and the water separately. So go ahead and put in the chat box or talk to your neighbor. What do you think is going to happen when we add the Alka-Seltzer to this bottle? I'll give you a minute to put something in there. And while you're writing in your answer or your guess, your hypothesis, your prediction, I'm going to go ahead and take the top off of my bottle, and I'm going to start breaking my antacid tablet into a couple different pieces. Should have mentioned that it's kind of messy. So I have my mess bucket at the ready, and I have my towel next to me to help me clean up for later. All right. So let's see. Kristen says it's going to bubble and mix up. All right. Okay, so maybe you're talking together about what you think will happen. So let's try it out. I'm just going to add a whole bunch of these at the same time, and we're going to see. All right, right away, I observe that the Alka-Seltzer fell to the bottom. What do you see happening? If it's hard to see from what's happening next to me, I'm going to share my screen again, and I've got a video that I can play for you. So give me just a moment to share my screen.
We can see a lot of
action. Yeah, I'm noticing a lot of action, definitely. All right, so I'm gonna play our video here. So hopefully from home, you can see it a little better. There goes the Alka-Seltzer tablet. And right away, we're starting to see a reaction. We're starting to see bubbles. And bubbles, inside of those bubbles, there's a gas. And that gas is carbon dioxide, the same thing that you breathe out when you exhale. So we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Now I slow down the video, so we're seeing it in slow motion right now. So you can see those bubbles floating to the top, that carbon dioxide gas. But is there anything surprising happening? Write it in the chat. Is there anything happening that you didn't expect? I'll give you a moment to make some observations and write in what you're noticing in the chat. Thanks, Mindy. Mindy noticed that it's mixing. I wonder, is it mixing permanently? Is it like making, like if you mix food coloring and water together, is it mixing together and completely? Lots of bubbles in the oil, yeah. Now, what I'm also noticing is that the bubbles, the white bubbles full of carbon dioxide are going to the top, but then these blue bubbles are falling back down. Why could that be? Well, those blue bubbles, if we look at them, notice what color they are. Tell your neighbor what color you see the bubbles that are falling down are. Yeah, they're kind of blue, or they might appear a little green. Now remember, in my container, the blue part was the water. So there are blue bubbles of water falling to the bottom. Talk to your neighbor, why could that be? Why would there be water falling from the top? I'm going to show you one more view of this experiment. So I'm going to go to the next image, next video. And this will show us what's going on closer to the top. Maybe that'll give us a different view. There goes the Alka-Seltzer. And right away we can see those bubbles full of carbon dioxide gas very quickly rising to the top. And we slowed it down again. And you might be able to see, along with those white bubbles full of carbon dioxide gas, it's pulling up some of that blue water along with it. And as that blue water makes its way to the surface, it's kind of being pulled up with the bubbles. But when the bubbles get to the surface, what do you see happening to the bubbles? What do bubbles do when they're in a liquid? Do they stay there forever? They pop. Yeah, so they definitely pop. And when those air bubbles pop, that water that was brought to the surface is now kind of condensing and finding itself. And when it gets into a ball heavy enough, it falls down back to the bottom. So we're seeing a really interesting phenomenon where we're getting the water pulled up by the bubbles. And then once they get to the top and the air starts popping and being released, then that heavy water starts falling back down again. So we got kind of this cycle going on. Absolutely. All right, let me see. So now that you've done this experiment together, try it out again. This is really fun to keep around, and you can do it as many times as you want. And there's one more thing we can do. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. It takes a minute sometimes. And in order to make it look more like a lava lamp, where did I put my cap? Here it is. I'm going to put the cap back on my container here because I don't want any oil to spill all over my desk. I'm going to use a flashlight. And what you can do is you can put a flashlight underneath. Oh, you know what? Let's add some more Alka-Seltzer. That'll be more fun, I think. All right. There's some Alka-Seltzer. I'm going to add a lot of Alka-Seltzer.
Amelia says she's using Effordent denture tablets.
Yeah.
Since she doesn't have Alka-Seltzer, so that's another brand maybe you have around the house.
Absolutely. Yep, okay, so I've got my bubbles going. Yeah, what happens is when we put those tablets in water, it mixes the acid and the base in a host fluid. All right, so now maybe it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if this is going to focus or not. And if you turn out the lights, it's even more cool. So go ahead and try that out at home. When you get a chance, use a flashlight and you can make yourself an oil and water and Alka-Seltzer lava lamp with a flashlight. All right, my friends. Now, one more note before we end our program today is that when we're cleaning up, it's really important to remember that we should never put oil down in the sink. It can be bad for the pipes. So find out from your local waste management district what's the best way to dispose of oil. Here in San Francisco, you can go to recology.com, but make sure you find out what's appropriate for where you live. And if you're not sure, ask another adult in your household. But for me, I like to keep this around and do the experiment over and over again. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen one last time. And Janine, you can let me know if there were any unanswered comments or questions in the chat.
No, you're all caught up.
Thank you. Okay, so now today we explored together. We did our science demonstration. We observed, we talked together, we asked questions. And you can keep doing that all the time. So keep on exploring and observing and asking questions around you. And that's it. Thank you for being a member and thank you for joining us today for our special member program. And look for more opportunities in the future. And I hope that you all take care and are safe together. Thanks for joining us.